Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. Our next guest says that if you are using traditional pricing methods or using gut feel to price freight, it ain't gonna cut it in the digital age. With me today in the hot seat, I have Dawn Salvucci-Favier from Greenscreens AI. Dawn, welcome to the hot seat.
Thanks, Spencer. It's great to be here.
All right, before we jump in here and heat things up, we got a lot of ground to cover here. Just take 20, 30 seconds. Tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing there with your company.
Sure. So Greenscreens is a company that our primary customers are freight brokers and 3PLs, and we are really a predictive pricing platform today that is aimed at really helping, as again, brokers and 3PLs understand what they should be buying and selling freight for in the transactional spot market. We take a very different approach to it than what some of the more traditional tools, as you mentioned in your opening, that I'm happy to talk to the group about here today.
Well, I can't wait. So let's jump right in right there. So what is the challenge here that we're really help us understand the problem? What are we really trying to solve for, and why is the traditional hands-on method insufficient at this present time?
Yeah, so there's really three primary problems that we have set out to solve and frankly been quite successful in solving for our customers. The first is the issue of competitiveness, right? Our goal is to level the playing field and, if you will, democratize data and technology for the masses, right? For those logistics companies that may not have the capital or the resources to invest in developing their own technology to enable a truly dynamic pricing environment, right? So we know that some of the largest organizations in the industry have invested heavily, millions of dollars in building out this capability that really gives them a couple different things. Number one is the connectivity with the shippers to really enable a truly responsive, dynamic environment. And the second is the business intelligence and data science to help them understand how they should be buying and selling based on the market conditions. But the majority of the companies in the market don't have the ability to invest millions of dollars to build that. So that was really one of our first goals in coming into the market. You know, the second is really the volatility of the spot market itself. We've certainly seen a couple cycles now over the past couple of years. So whether it's an up market or a down market, a sudden temporary shift in the market, or a black swan event like COVID, it's really very difficult to determine what an individual company's true buy rate is going to be in any given market situation. And until now, most of the pricing methods that have been available have been based on stale, dirty data that's not really contextualized to the individual buying power of a specific operation. Just because the market rate says it's $1,000 doesn't mean that, Spencer, that's what you're going to pay or what I'm going to pay as a
Hmm.
brokerage. It's not what you will be able to buy it for based on your buying patterns and your freight mix or your regional equipment or specialization or regional basis or equipment specialization. So, you know, that's really the second problem that we're trying to solve is really hone in on for an individual company. What is your true buy rate in the current market? Um, and then the last would be the issue of it's kind of a broad category, but people, product, and growth, I will say. So from a people perspective, or people productivity and growth rather, you know, on the people side, you know, the industry has extremely high turnover, long ramp up time to get a new rep effectively pricing and winning freight in the business. So, you know, what we're bringing to the market is really to help enable putting a new rep, putting a butt in the seat, and arming them with the tools that they need to become more effective at pricing freight more quickly, right? Average time for someone to get good at pricing freight before green screens 12 to 18 months, right? And we can get a new rep there much faster with our decision support tools. Um, the second is, you know, along the lines of productivity. Look, pricing freight has been a largely manual process that often takes more time than a shipper is willing to wait for a response. So there's the risk of losing business. There's, you know, if you don't get it right, there's the margin compression, right? So how do you leverage the tools to help make better decisions faster, win more business, win it more profitably? And then the last piece of that is really the limited opportunity to automate, or even where there are opportunities to automate, there's limited appetite to automate a pricing function when there's very little confidence behind the data that's being used to do it. So that's really kind of the third piece around the people, the productivity, and the growth that is enabled by our product.
So obviously this is a major concern. There, there's this certainly interest around moving towards leveraging these AI tools to make better decisions. But just for our audience benefit, can you quantify? I mean, in terms of what have you in your team, what have you seen in terms of the delta between what you typically see margin wise that are 100% manual versus something that's more in line with what some of your customers are doing, leveraging these tools in combination?
Yeah, sure. I thank you for that question, actually, because this is something we've been very, very focused on this year. The results from our algorithm are highly accurate because of the approach that we take to training the model and making sure that the data is very clean and very real time to get to that rate of what an individual company is actually going to pay. Um, all of our customers, as part of the success criteria for go live of our product, are achieving a margin of error of 10% or less. And that is when we compare the price that our algorithm has predicted they will pay to what they actually book the freight at, we are within a 10% margin of error. Okay. And many of our customers are achieving better than that, but 10% is kind of our baseline threshold of we're doing our job here. What we have learned from our customers is historically, before green screens, the margins of error on that are more around the 18 to 22%, right, of what they were experiencing before green screens. Now, we now have the data that we're able to show that the difference between, say, a 9% margin of error and, say, a 20% margin of error equates to more one business for the brokerage and up to 45% more margin on the business that you do win.
Wow.
So if you think about a win rate curve of, you price freight low, you're probably going to win more, but you're either going to lose money or lose margin on that freight. You price it too high, you're not going to win the freight. So there really is a sweet spot of, how the accuracy of that target buy rate and then applying your target margins on top of that, with that win rate curve, right? We now that we've been in the market for over a year, we have also been able to measure year-over-year comparisons of 2021 to the same period in 2022, and we've kind of sliced the data by cohort groups overall, several different ways. But what we've found is that the large majority, with few exceptions, of our customers are achieving an improvement in every metric, like volume, revenue, total margin, margin per load, revenue per load, etc. When you compare 2021 to the same period in 2022, even in kind of a down market, as we're being told.
No, that's fascinating. So obviously, if it's not hard to understand why your business has experienced such rapid growth. Offline, we talked about 550% projected growth year over year for your team at Greenscreens. So that's moving. That's
It is. We're cooking.
and kudos to you. So let's talk about this because um, there's always the temptation to when you talk about dynamic pricing. Well, let's develop our own product. Let's do that in house. Let's have our own engineers and software developers to do this. From a value proposition, like why do you see people why are your customers choosing to go your direction versus just developing it in house?
Yeah, it's interesting because first of all, it's hard to build. It's taken us more than 2 years to get here. It's hard to maintain. As I said, there's some of the larger companies in the industry have invested millions of dollars in developing this technology, and most companies, frankly, don't have the capital to invest in that. So it is difficult. But I think the biggest thing that we are seeing, and frankly, we are starting to engage even with some of those companies who have already made the investment to build it themselves, where data is king, right? The more data, the better the results are going to be. So not only are we, training a model for each customer individually, but we're also aggregating and anonymizing the data of all of those customers. We're cleansing all of that data. So we've got real time, extremely clean, aggregated data from 65 brokers today, and we're growing. You talked about the pace at which we're growing. And a lot of even these larger organizations that have built this for themselves are starting to understand that the power of their algorithms is only ever going to be as good as their own data, right?
Mhm.
So what happens when they're pricing lanes they've never run before, right? Things like that. So that's really kind of part of the value proposition associated with why somebody would want to
Mhm.
work with green screens as opposed to building out themselves. The other thing I will say is that a big part of our strategy is, putting our application where the users already are. So we have kind of an partner ecosystem play. So we're already pre-integrated into 9 TMSs, and we're constantly adding new partners, not just in the TMS space, but in the automation space as well. So, for the large part of our customer base, it's a very simple plug and play as far as not only getting the data, but also having the output of the system, both the rates themselves and a lot of the decision support tools that we produce for the users directly in their existing workflow.
Mhm. Well, Don, I'm curious. Obviously the huge impact on what's happening, but this is big change organizationally and culturally for companies that integrate this type of technology into their company. So, what have you observed over the last 2 years about the company cultures that have partnered with with these AI decision making tools? What have you observed?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm going to date myself here, but I've been in the freight tech space for 22 years. And one thing that I've noticed recently is, the buyers, the technology buyers in our industry are becoming younger, more data savvy, more tech savvy, and things like that. And I found that, some of our most successful organizations, number one, they understand the power of data and sharing data, right? That we're better together, right, in aggregate than any one individual company. I think that the leadership has bought in on the concept. They understand that they need to do something different than what they've been doing in order to compete and grow their business and keep up with the market. And they have very strong change management, right? They have incented their users to break the muscle memory, I guess, that they have of continuing to do what they've always done in pricing freight. Generally speaking, once we get over the initial hurdles of, okay, there's this another new tool that you need to use. We're
Right.
trying to make it easier for you because it's right in your workflow. And once you get over the initial hurdles, it doesn't take long to win over a customer. One of my favorite stories, this goes back over a year ago, but, one of the customer sales reps at one of our customers, she was initially very, very skeptical. She was like, I don't know about this. I don't like this. I don't like it. Within her first month, she kind of reached out and she said, I just want to let you know that since I started using your application, I've not only been winning more loads, but I've been actually making more margin on the loads that I've been winning. And, particularly for a customer sales rep, but even for a carrier sales rep, sometimes that's all you need to prove, right? Is
Hmm.
you're going to win more and you're going to win more margin on that, and they're bought in.
Yeah, well, the numbers don't lie. If you can prove it out, that's pretty easy sell. So one of the things that's interesting, Dom, with where our worlds intersect, on the M&A side, everyone's looking for a competitive edge, and if they can't create it, they're gonna buy it, right? So and I think that's kind of where we're at, both on the freight side and on the brokerage side of the business. And so I think what was interesting when we were talking offline about how fast that your business is growing, and I think that trying to find whatever the next tools are, and part of that was bringing on an investor. So a lot of folks are in that space where maybe over the last 3 years, whether they're on on the freight side, whether they're on the brokerage, or whether they're freight tech, maybe they're growing at a hyper level as you have. How did you process the decision to take on an investor back in February? Was it Tiger Global? Um,
Tiger led the round,
yeah.
but we did have an investor group of total of 8
Mhm.
investors in the round, but led by Tiger, yes. How did we go about that? I mean, look, we knew that we were on to something. We launched the product into market in April of 2021. We were a fairly bootstrapped company. We knew that there was huge potential to grow. Unfortunately, the demand was greater than our ability to grow organically. So that we knew that to achieve our potential, we were going to need to do at least a seed raise. So we were able to get that seed raised together that, again, allowed us to, staff appropriately, add more developers, add more capabilities, add some sales and marketing to help us grow the business even more, to then set us up to do another larger round in the future. Now,
Mhm.
I mentioned the year over year growth, 550% as of the end of September, and the majority of that growth has actually really come in the since the fourth quarter, but most of it has come this year. And again, I
Mhm.
think it's largely because we had that infusion of cash that allowed us to spend more in marketing and in development and investing into our customers. So that's been huge for us.
Oh, I love what you're doing. I can't wait to see what you do next. So let's talk about the future. You know, dynamic pricing, looking out ahead. You've been here. You said 22 years in freight tech. Like, what do you see in the next 3 to 5 years as some potential developments in this specific space?
Yeah. So look, today we are focused on exclusively on the truckload spot market. We do, though, have a strategic roadmap that we're beginning to execute against that is really going to expand beyond just the spot market into some longer term forecasting, expanding beyond van reefer flatbed, but looking at things like drayage, intermodal, specialized equipment, things like that. But more importantly, starting to look at things like I call it a CPFR process for transportation capacity, right? Collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment, which really brings in all of the stakeholders, the logistics stakeholders, right? The whole ecosystem, the shippers, the carriers, the LSPs in a collaborative environment, sharing forecasts. Our vision is really that we become a platform for revenue optimization and yield management across the industry, but also supporting a more collaborative, iterative procurement process across the board. And I hope that if we've learned anything from the last 2 years, that the supply chain industry in general needs to become more flexible and resilient. As I listen to people outside of our industry talk about the supply chain issues, because of course everybody is an expert in supply chain now, right?
What?
I
Right.
know, right? Everybody's a supply chain expert
Right.
because it's a hot topic and they're pointing blame. And what I try to tell people is, my opinion is that this problem was created decades ago when we as an industry started optimizing for lean, low cost supply chains and not for resilience and flexibility, right? So my vision for the future around pricing and procurement is that, um, and I'm starting to kind of see this come, is that we become more open to collaborative and flexible, I'd say capacity portfolio management, right? That
Hmm.
balances contract and spot. It moves away from long-term bidding towards more cyclical procurement cycles, that's driven by supply and demand, actual supply and demand.
Yeah.
Like I said, CPFR like. Um, but for that to happen, I think there's a few things that need to happen. And again, I'm starting to see it is, we as an industry have been hesitant to embrace some of these things, but we have to embrace the power of big data and data sharing. As I said, we need to embrace the technology that will enable more dynamic sourcing that is sensitive to market fluctuations. We need to embrace automation, at least automation of the low hanging fruit, and also to enable better human decision support,
Hmm.
break down the silos between organizations and within organizations. And then I think, of my freight tech background, the majority of that is TMS. I think that we need to start the breaking apart of monolithic application platforms that are kind of all things to all people and aim towards more of a technology ecosystem that's built from tightly coupled specialized best of breed applications that are suited for specific tasks like predictive pricing and procurement and things like that.
So I got one more question for you, Don. A little bit of a wild card. Um, who would you say right now? are one or two thought leaders in the tech space that are you think are really doing tremendous things that you have your eye on?
Oh, in the tech space. Well, there are several in the tech space. I think there's several in the industry in general
Mm.
that are doing some great things. I mean, if you look at data and analytics, I think Jason Miller is doing University of Michigan. It could be Michigan. I think it's University of Michigan. He'll
I
probably
think
be
it's
mad at me.
Michigan State. It's
Michigan
Michigan
State. I'm
State.
sorry, Michigan State. Jason Miller is doing some great things
Yeah, he
from a
is.
data and an analytics perspective. I think FTR, who I've been following for at least 20 of my 22 years, are doing some great things. Just from a data and an analytics perspective, from a technology perspective, I mean, there are several TMS vendors out there. Some with that are more geared towards the brokerage industry that are embracing more of that connected ecosystem, less of a monolithic people like Turvo, people like 3GTMS, people like Ty, who we are partnered with. There are the other partners in our ecosystem that are enabling things like automation, like HubTech and AVRL. Great partners. Parade is another one watching. I would say any company that is embracing true. And I think true AI ML is somebody to watch. And unfortunately, AI and ML has been an overused term in the industry. But those are some of the folks that I would definitely are ones that I would keep an eye on now. And then just as far as people's understanding of the industry. You've got, the Chris Jollies of the world. He gets it that there's a lot of great influencers and a lot of great content that's out there for folks to follow and listen to.
I love it. Well, Don, fascinating insights. Thank you so much for being on our program. That's going to do it for us in the hot seat, Don. We will see you next time.